Hello, Yankee. Welcome those joining. We give it time for people to come in. Couple minutes. Maggasekha, JRF. Hello, Steve. Today is apparently a holiday. Well, actually, I knew this weekend. I didn't know, but that's not going to affect the people who don't live in America anyway. So we'll see if that has any impact. Hello, Risa, Anna. Hello, Dharma learner. Yes, if anything, I'm actually overweight. I'm uh, I'm attempting to lose some pounds. That's the way the monk's life is. When you can't control your food, one place you starve, the other place you get overfed. All right, Steve. Good job. I actually have this app on my phone that I downloaded when I was in Australia. Um, that you can actually choose 3 different places and choose like what time you can like slide to what time, and it'll tell you what the time is in the other place. So that's that was very valuable. Still is when I have to deal with people in Australia. All right, so we'll start in about 1 minute. Hello, Jayantha. Welcome. We'll bring up the chanting. Hello, Diane. Welcome. Hello, Ricky. All right. So we'll get started. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. All right. By the way, whenever I'm sharing anything, just do tell me if it's a bit too small on the screen, so I can I can always make it larger or smaller, etc. So let's get do the chant. Savattini danang ekamantang titoko kamado deva putto bhagavantang etaddavocha dukkarang bhagavasa dukkarang bhagavati dukkaran vapi karonti kamadati bhagava seka sila samahita chittatta anagari upetassa tutti hoti sukhavahati Tulabha Bhagava Yadidang Tutiti Dulabhang Vapi Labanti Kamadati Bhagava Chitta Vupasamerata Yesang Divacharatocha Bhavanaya Rato Manoti Dusamadahang Bhagava Yadidang Chitanti Dusahamadahang vapi samadahati dahanti kamadati bhagava indriyu pasamerata te chetva machuno jalang arya gachanti kamadati duggamo bhagava vissamo maggoti duggame visame vapi arya gachanti kamada Anariya visamme magge patanti avangsira. Ariyanang samo maggo ariyahi visamme samati. All right, English with Kamada. At Savatthi, standing to one side, the god Kamada said to the Buddha, "It's too hard, Blessed One. It's just too hard." They do it even though it's hard, said the Buddha to Kamada. The stable trainees with ethics and immersion. For one who has entered the homeless life, contentment brings happiness. Such contentment, Blessed One, is hard to find. They find it even though it's hard, said the Buddha to Kamada. Those who love peace of mind, whose minds love to meditate day and night. But it's hard, Blessed One, to immerse this mind in samadhi. They become immersed in samadhi even though it's hard, said the Buddha to Kamada. Those who love calming the faculties have cut through the net of death. The noble ones, Kamada, go on their way. But this path, Blessed One, is rough and hard to travel. Though it's rough and hard to travel, the noble ones, Kamada, go on their way. The ignoble fall headfirst on a rough path. But the path of the noble ones is smooth, for the noble ones are smooth amid the rough. Sadhu. All right, friends, welcome to it's Monday night, so welcome to another edition of Dhammapalooza, the 2-hour festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community. During this festival of Dhamma, we do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities. We did some chanting. Maybe later we'll do some meditation. Who knows what else we'll do, right? Because this Dhammapalooza is always community guided, meaning that you all have a say in what's going to happen. I never put a topic for Dhammapalooza because I don't know what the topic's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen. It could be just all Q&A. It could be just all sutta reading. It could be somebody wants me to give a Dhamma talk on a topic. So we'll see how it goes. So right now, I'll keep an eye in the chat for a couple of minutes. If you have any questions you'd like me to answer, any topics you'd like me to talk about, any topics you'd like the community to discuss together, please put it in the chat. And if nothing, I always have a sutta in my back pocket. Actually, this was a sutta recommended by somebody last Dhammapalooza. So if we read a sutta, well, we always have one. We always have one lined up. It's always good to have a sutta in your back pocket. JRF says, what's the best suttas regarding anxiety, both caused and uncaused? What's uncaused? What's uncaused anxiety? Anxiety, like everything, is conditioned. Ah, well, just because I don't know that something deserves a special category because you don't have the wisdom yet to see its cause. Right? It has arisen due to causes and conditions, as everything. We won't always be able to see those causes and conditions because they can be quite diverse, varied, very subtle sometimes. So we don't really necessarily know sometimes how something arises. I don't know that no sutta like comes up in mind directly regarding anxiety. Trying to think. I mean, I guess possibly anything where the Buddha's talking about restlessness and remorse would probably be covered under anxiety. Because what we think of anxiety and what the Buddha might think of, obviously there's no word really per se that means anxiety as we think of anxiety in the modern age. Um, the Buddha talks about anxiety and like, attachment to loved ones, fear of loss, these kind of things. I guess I would say any sutta that talks about impermanence, contemplation of impermanence. Those might be good suttas to look at. Yeah, that's the best I can kind of give to that question. Anxiety is always related to some level of fear, which is always related to some level of delusion. Well, the more we see things as they are, the less anxiety we have. Even those of us who are more prone towards, um, people might be prone more towards neurotic thinking, negative thinking. Some might be more prone genetically to that than others. Even for those types of people, um, this practice allows you to deal more with uncertainty and fear and the things that tend to play into the arising of anxiety. All right. I don't see any questions. Perhaps I'll give it another minute, but perhaps we'll read the sutta. Dharma learner, it's from a question. The best suttas to read regarding anxiety. Is there a good sutta for mindfulness? Yeah, the best sutta, Satipatthana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 10. And Digha Nikaya number 22, I think, is Mahasatipatthana Sutta. That's the sutta for mindfulness. We actually have a friend on Twitch asking a question. It has nothing to do with Buddhism, but this is I think the first time that somebody on Twitch is asking a question. Um, Hello, Halcyon. Welcome. That is an unanswerable question. Let's see. Can I show this so that other people can see it? Yeah, I guess I can. Can God make a stone so heavy that he cannot lift it? That is an unanswerable question in Buddhism. One of those questions not worth pondering in Buddhist circles. All right. Hello, Rick Thorne. Welcome. Intense physical exercise and clean eating dramatically reduces anxiety. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I also agree. I have also experienced that. The years before I went to the monastery, I was in the best shape, physically, mentally, spiritually. It was great. Even better than now, actually. But it is what it is. This new struggles, new time, new life. But yeah, sometimes I wish I could go for a run or do some kettlebell, stuff like that, like I used to. There is a lot of positive emotion that arises from physical exercise. Steve is saying that his wife has been diagnosed with an unstoppable illness. Focusing another on loss and impermanence. Yeah. So, well, is there a time limit, Steve? Or is this a illness that is, livable, but it's always going to be there, kind of a thing. I guess Steve hasn't responded yet. I'll move on, keeping Steve in my mind here. Time limit. All right. So your wife has a time limit. What do you do? There's a wonderful sutta called Simile of the Mountains. Right? The mountains are closing in. What can you do? The king's answer is to do good deeds, live skillfully, practice Dhamma. Whether it's tomorrow or 70 or 80 years from now, all of us have a time limit. There is a reason why I end every stream I do with, if I'm around next time, I'll see you on Monday or tomorrow morning or whatever. Steve, if you want to talk, send me an email. And I mean, throughout the whole process. Some of you probably don't know, but I was married once. It's going on, what year is it? 23. Um, Halcyon, I see you. However, there's other questions too. I have most of the people on the stream are on YouTube, not, not on Twitch. So I will get to your questions. But yeah, I was married, and it's been it's been 18 years since my wife died of cancer. So, I don't want to make the whole stream about this. But if you want to talk, we can talk. All right. Does Buddhists not have a god? No, Buddhism, the question of a creator god is not something that is important in Buddhism. There's no Buddhism is one of the only religions that doesn't have like a creation myth, like a beginning. It doesn't really make a difference in Buddhism. The Buddha tells us that we are stuck in this cycle called samsara, where we keep coming back. We are in this cycle because um, because we have craving, and we want to keep coming back, and we continue to suffer. And through practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, we can end that cycle and end our suffering. There's no talk of who created things, or these kind of things. It's just essentially taken that it's always been. It's kind of like eternal cycles. In Hinduism, they have the creator god Brahma, but the Buddha kind of, how shall I say, dethrones Brahma a little bit. Um, he's not a creator god of all things. Um, but other than that, doesn't really talk because it's not really necessarily something that was big, and it's not really the Buddha's focus throughout all of his teachings is you, your mind and your body, and how do you end your suffering. That's it. He doesn't talk about the universe and all these other things. His whole teaching is, the Buddha says, both formally and now, all I have ever taught is dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. Everything else is speculation and debate and things that the Buddha doesn't get into. JRF, you've lost 42 pounds. Very good. Congratulations. Keep going. Good job. Halcyon says, what's a Buddhist? A Buddhist is a person who follows the teachings of the Buddha. Gregory is having some struggles in his life. Yeah. Lots of opportunities for false speech. You know, my experience in life has been, if you speak the truth, even if in the short term it doesn't seem like it's beneficial, in the long term it ends up being most beneficial. Is exercising against the Vinaya, or do you just need to use your time for other things? No, it's not against the Vinaya, but there are certain things that monks just don't do. I mean, I guess technically there's no rule that says a monk can't run. Monk can't run like in a city, like among the villages, but there's really no rule that I can think of off the top of my head that a monk can't run like in the wilderness. And when I at the place where I ordained Bhavana Society, um, for many years, I did an hour of woodworking a day, like cutting wood, stacking wood, lugging wood. So I got in a good amount of exercise, which coupled with the vegetarian diet meant I was always quite tired and yeah, very low energy. But it was fun. I really love working with wood. One of the things I look forward to is, when I have my own monastery, if when I have my own monastery, is, you know, doing some woodwork. I'll always love doing that. Living in a kuti with no electricity, these kind of things. Since I've been a nomad, actually, since I've been a nomad, mostly I've lived in more creature comfort the most since I became a monk. I do miss the days of being in a kuti, in a wood stove kuti. I miss those days. Just that part of the, just the living in the kuti with the wood stove part, not the rest of it. All right. So you can do exercise. It's more about like the proper thing for a monk to do and doing it in public. Like for instance, like there are monks that do yoga. I do yoga and stretching, but I and there are some very, very rare monks, very few, just a handful that I know of that will do yoga with lay people. That I can come or I can take it or leave it with that. I don't think that's a, I don't know. There's just too many opportunities for a monk when you're doing yoga, flashing people, and it's just not appropriate. So I wouldn't. Only when I'm staying with Bante Rahula do I do yoga with in front of lay people. And I'm always like worried. It's like you're down dog, okay? These kind of things. But yeah, I do squats, I do, different exercises, things like that, burpees. Um, I like to kind of have some kind of activity for sure. It's kind of like before I do my morning work, I try to do a couple hours of like business, like suttas, Pali, answering emails, all the kind of Maggasekha business. And before I start that, I do a little bit of stretching, a little bit of, exercise to just get the heart, racing a little bit just to, pep me up. Dharma learners, sitting with fear seems to be an experience that I find it's much harder to get through than physical pain. Usually I lose my sitting position and need to regroup and start over. Well, yeah, I mean especially if the fear is usually of something that's worse than just physical pain, right? Maybe it's like, oh, you're sitting meditating in the dark in the woods and your legs are in pain, but you're more fearful that a creature might come. If not bears, then Bigfoot or aliens or something, or vampires might come. Of course, fear is always going to be the hardest thing to endure. And it's also what causes us most of our suffering. Fear, anxiety, all these things is concern about the future. When we're concerned about the future, we're not living in the present. So in my life, Rick is saying I've found that anxiety tends to be created from past trauma. Yeah, bad things happen to us, and our survival instincts basically, tell us to fear something like that happening again. So when we have, traumatic reactions to experiences we've had. Halcyon says, "Is Buddhism a religion?" Yes, yes, Buddhism is a religion. Yep. Some people don't might not want to take it as a religion, like Westerners who are interested in Buddhism but don't want to have the title of religion in their life because they think of religion in a certain way. But no, yes, Buddhism is a religion. Gregory, I've been chanting Metta Suttas and five remembrances at night before bed, and it has helped with anxiety. Are there suttas specifically for other Brahma Viharas like mudita? Well, one of the things you can always do is you go to Sutta Central and you type in mudita. I'm pretty sure there's like a mudita sutta, even if it's just like 3 lines, things like that. There will be little suttas, but in the suttas, metta is really what gets the most play. But almost always when the Buddha is talking about metta using the framework, he's also including the other Brahma Viharas. So And I think metta gets the most play because I don't think you can have the other Brahma Viharas without metta. Because again, compassion that the Buddha is talking about is not, I see somebody suffering, I feel sad, and I have compassion. That's not what the compassion that the Buddha is talking about. Buddha's compassion is compassion for all beings without distinction, without categorization. And to have that, you need to have metta. You have to have goodwill for all beings first, because you don't, watch this in your own life. You do not have compassion for people you have ill will towards. You just don't. The politician you hate, the people on the other side of the political divide or whatever, you don't have compassion for them. That's because you have mundane compassion. You don't have the Buddhist transcendent compassion. So you need, if you have the Buddhist transcendent compassion, then uh, because practicing lots of metta, then you're really practicing compassion. So yeah, what I would say is you go to Sutta Central or do a Google search, type in Karuna Sutta, Mudita Sutta, things like that, and they'll come up. This is one of the fun things about doing searches on something like Sutta Central, because you just find like totally random suttas that way, and it can be quite interesting. See, Halcyon makes a typical mistake here. It's a religion, but you don't refer to Buddha as a god. See, this is one of the mistakes that the average Westerner makes, that religion equals God. That's not the case. There's 5,000 religions in the world. Not all of them have some monotheistic creator God. That's not how it works. A religion is much, the definition of religion and what a religion is much more broader than the Abrahamic monotheistic perspective of religion. But that's just what most people are used to, because those are the dominant religions in the world. So that's kind of the framework that people have religion. Uh, if I ordained and finished the process, would I be able to use the skateboard? No, there's no monastic that would find that appropriate for monks to use a skateboard. Is there any connection between yoga and Buddhism over time? Um, no, not in the early texts. You might see, because there are times in the history of Buddhism where there's a pretty strong mixture of yogic Brahmanic stuff into Buddhism, that you'll find in Theravada and Mahayana, and that you won't find in the early texts. But this is, yoga is its own religion in a way, its own philosophy, its own, like, actual yoga from like ancient India yoga, not like modern Western. We just do a bunch of poses to stretch. Actual yoga is its own religion, its own philosophy, its own thing. So it even has its own 8 limbs. Like we have the Eightfold Path. Three streams Dhamma. How do you feel about the paritas? Did the Buddha recommend them for protection, or are they the result of cultural tradition? Um, they're the result of culture and tradition. However, not modern culture and tradition. These are things, this concept is pre-Buddha, right? The Buddha came into the world in Brahmanic India with this concept being a part of their culture. Right? You sacrifice things to the devas at little shrines so that you can have their protection. The power of a holy person can have some kind of protection, etc. But and what you see in the suttas throughout so many places where the Buddha basically just flat out destroys that. You know, the Buddha gives one or two paritas in all of the early texts in the suttas. One of those, of course, is one of my favorites, the Kanda Parita, which is not actually what it's called. That's what it's become. But it's from a sutta called By a Snake, where the Buddha, a monk dies, and the monks go to the Buddha and say, "What happened? Why did this monk die?" And the Buddha said, "Well, if he had suffused metta to the four great snake lineages, he wouldn't have died." And then he gives a parita of developing metta for the creatures that you're living with in the wilderness, which is kind of like a duh. I mean, I guess it's a duh because of modern, I'm studied. Maybe it wasn't so much of a duh for the monks who were doing it at the time of the Buddha, but the protection was having goodwill for all beings. That's the protection, right? So it's not like some kind of outward, it's not like a mystical force that you get protection from. It's that you actually have developed your mind to such an extent that beings can feel and understand the goodwill coming from. That's your protection. Right? So so that kind of thing is a protection in the early texts. Like your good karma, right? Your good merit. That's the protection. What we have like in more modern times is almost a return to form of the Brahmanic tradition. Right? Like you go to a holy man, the holy man throws some holy water at you, and then you feel okay, you feel better, and then go on your business. This is there's a funny suit. Actually, it's a monastic rule. And so the Buddha was giving a teaching. And somebody sneezed. So they said, "Long life, long life." And the Buddha said, "Monks, if on account of you saying long life, would this person actually have long life?" They're like, "No, Bhante." So the Buddha says, "So don't say long life." Right? And so the monks are like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Of course, of course." So they stopped saying long life. Saying long life is basically like in modern West where we say bless you when somebody sneezes, right? It's like a ward off of protection or like a wish, like, oh, well, long life, don't be sick, long life. It's the same thing as God bless you. Bless you is God bless you, right? God bless you, may you be better, etc. Right? Very nice, it's a nice thought, etc. And so the monks stopped saying long life. And the lay people got pissed. They're like, we say long life to these monks. They're what are they so high mighty? They're so they don't want to, they don't give us good, They don't say long life to us. And so the Buddha, this came to the Buddha, and the Buddha said, lay people really like superstition. So you can say it to lay people. And yes, that is exactly what the Buddha says, and that is in the Vinaya. Yes. The Buddha basically acknowledges, like, yeah, this is part of the culture. This is how lay people are. So say it, for the sake of the culture, for the sake of, being kind and things like that, you can say it. And so when you see there's a lot of stuff in modern Buddhism that the Buddha actually specifically says for monks not to do that monks do, like house blessings and things like this. Um, it is what it is. This is just the nature of how things go over time. Like I go back and forth. It's like when I become a senior monk, I'm not going to give any house blessings. That's Buddha says not to, but then a nice Thai or Sri Lankan family who really likes me and supports me, they want to have a house blessing. I'm kind of like, uh, I mean, it's a kind thing to do for them, I guess. Like, these are kind of things that I have a conflict with, because I am a pretty strong fundamentalist early Buddhist text person, um, but I'm also a quite agreeable person that wants people to feel good. So so I have conflicts about this. I don't know what's the right way to do it, and what my policy will be and things. All right, Rick, can you share some reflections on living within our means and within right measure? Right measure. I'm not sure I know this term, right measure. Living within our means. You know, a lot of it is dependent on like how you grew up. Some people kind of grow up poor and then they become rich, and then it's and because of that kind of the drives and the inclinations of growing up poor, they feel like they have to keep having more so that they never go back to poor again. Things like that. Um, there's various drives that people will want to, you know, live outside their means. Maybe you can't afford the newest iPhone or an Xbox or whatever, but everybody else has one and you feel bad. And so you get a credit card and kill go into debt so you can have an Xbox or a phone or whatever. Was it really worth it? Probably not. But most people don't reflect on these things. Our ancestors lived with basically nothing. I mean, with what they could make and find in nature. Right? We actually are are built to have very little and to need very little. It's our modern society that kind of, and our modern standards of things that make that less um less practical. The Buddha says very clearly, the Buddha actually gives some economic advice. One should, there's a couple of times, but basically one should live so that their expenses don't excess their income. Right, that's one of them. The other one is he gives like I forgot the sutta, but it's something like one third for savings, one third for the government one third. Like basically like how he says like this is how you should divide your income. Right? And it's very practical. It's very good advice. It's advice that 99% of people don't follow today. But it is what it is. Steve is lamenting being a classical musician and what extent Buddhism would deem that a distraction. If you're a layperson, it's fine. You're a monastic and you still want to be a classical musician, not the best idea. Yes, there are outliers, but they're not viewed very well, um, amongst the peers of other monastics, for better or worse. And it's saying, I wouldn't wear a robe when I skate. When you become a monastic, the robe is what you wear. You don't like, I mean, yeah, like in Zen and things like that, they'll do this like the reverends where they're like, like I put on kind of like a priest puts on the garment, for the mass, and then wears like the black, clothing. Otherwise, when you become a monk, you wear this is what you wear. You don't wear anything else. You don't if you're like moonlighting, you like take this off and go into town with lay clothes. That's not good. That's not a good thing. If you want to do that, then you really shouldn't be a monastic. Rick says, I've heard that right measure relates to actions like not eating or sleeping too much or too little. All right. Yeah, that's not a term like the Buddha uses. I'm sure somebody kind of used that term, and it makes sense, but it just needs to be. They're putting a term to something that the Buddha does say. That's basically what it is. So it's not a bad way of putting it, but it can be very confusing for people. Where does this fit? And is this the noble ninefold path, or things like that? Um, yeah, having a balanced life is important. Not eating too much, not sleeping too much, not sleeping too little. Listening to your body and what it needs. That's important. Finding a balance. Hello, Jay. Yeah, it might be in Sigalavata Sutta. There is one time where he's giving one of those financial advices is not in there. It's a separate sutta. Um, but part of that might be in there. All right. Well, we have come to the end of questions, and it's almost 8 o'clock. So why don't we do our meditation? And after we do our meditation, maybe if there's people around that have questions, we can do that, or we can just do read from Dhammapada and close out. All right. Set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you, whether sitting on a cushion, chair. We'll spend some time scanning through the body, doing a mindful scan, starting from the feet and going up to the head. Doing this reasons versus to bring our mind from the busy external to the internal of this mind and body. The second is to understand our posture and set ourselves up in such a way that we'll have less pain as we sit for longer periods. Start by placing your focus and attention on your feet. By placing focus and attention, this means to focus in on whatever sensation is arising in that part of the body, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, the cushion, the opposite leg, etc. Moving through the ankles into the calves, through the knees, into the thighs, up through to the hips and pelvis, paying close attention to the position of the pelvis and how that impacts both the lower and upper body. When you're ready, move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching here or there, nor that you're trying to make the spine very straight. Ideally, the spine should just be resting comfortably in its normal position with its natural curves. If you're leaning or slouching or making it straight, all of that will eventually cause back pain as you sit. Go up to the shoulders, checking that they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Down through to the elbows and hands. And finally up to the head, checking that the head is not leaning or slouching here or there. Chin parallel to the floor. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath as the body breathes in and breathes out. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored and will seek to run away to the past or the future, across the world, into various stories and fantasies, or an external distraction like a sound will arise and your mind will become latched onto it, annoyed by it. When this happens, you will totally lose your mindfulness and get wrapped up in the distraction. After a time, it will slowly start to dawn on you that you've been taken away. At that point, try to come back to full focus and mindfulness. Acknowledge you've been taken away. Practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting agitated and trying to push it away, nor by continuing to be attached to it. Try to let it go, to let it be, to give it no energy, effort, focus, attention. Let it go on its way and then return to the breath. So, whenever you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Always come back to the breath. It's always there doing its thing, ready for you to follow it towards a more calm and tranquil mind. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and tranquil or not? As it does, you may begin to notice more subtle, deeper characteristics of the breath, the impermanence of the breath, how it's changing. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. See if you can investigate the breath at an even deeper level. See more about the breath as the body's breathing in and out, bringing your mind deeper into calm and tranquility. Slowly start to open your eyes, moving from the internal to the external, becoming aware of the room around you and your body's position in it. Reflecting on the state of your mind now compared to before the meditation, and contemplating any experiences you might have had. And while you do that, we'll read some Dhammapada. Let's share screen. Heedfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The heedful die not. The heedless are as if dead already. Clearly understanding this excellence of heedfulness, the wise exult therein and enjoy the resort of the noble ones. The wise ones, ever meditative and steadfastly preserving, alone experience nibbana, the incomparable freedom from bondage. Ever grows the glory of him who is energetic, mindful, and pure in conduct, discerning and self controlled, righteous and heedful. By effort and mindfulness, by effort and heedfulness, discipline and self mastery, let the wise one make for himself an island which no flood can overcome. The foolish and ignorant indulge in heedlessness, but the wise one keeps his heedfulness as his best treasure. Do not give way to heedlessness. Do not indulge in sensual pleasures. Only the heedful and the meditative attain great happiness. Just as one upon the summit of a mountain beholds the groundlings, even so when the wise man casts away heedlessness by heedfulness and ascends the high tower of wisdom, this sorrowless sage beholds the sorrowing and the foolish multitude. Heedful among the heedless, wide awake among the sleepy, the wise man advances like a swift horse, leaving behind a weak jade. By heedfulness did Indra become the overlord of the gods. Heedfulness is ever praised, and heedlessness is ever despised. The monk who delights in heedfulness and looks with fear at heedlessness advances like fire, burning all fetters, small and large. The monk who delights in heedfulness and looks with fear at heedlessness will not fall. He is close to Nibbana. All right. I noticed there's a few questions, so we can cover those. K Poe, are you still here? Rick, are you still here? Rick has a question. What are skillful means when people do direct harm to us physically, verbally, and or financially? Hello, Anthony. Welcome. Good to see you, friend. How do we act, and what inner way of being do we cultivate in the mind and body? Well, you act by protecting yourself, right? It, uh, Evacuating yourself from harm. Right? Of course, obviously doing that in skillful ways, not harmful ways, but you protect yourself. Whatever way that protection entails, as you say, financially, verbally, physically, etc. Verbally, it's important. This is why Kakachupama Sutta, the simile of the saw, is very good for this. Physically or financially, that's tough. But if it's verbally, you have a bit more power to basically not allow what somebody says verbally to bother you. It's not as kind of immediate and brutal as physicality, or financially, etc. Still not easy, obviously, to reflect on how words are basically wind, but that is a place where you can focus and work on. Simile of the saw, Kakachupama Sutta. That's the best sutta for reflecting on unskillful speech. I think when you look into your own mind and you understand things, you reflect that you just understand that people in the world make bad decisions and act in unskillful, bad ways, evil ways, even malicious ways. So this is normal. This is the nature of the world. So then the question becomes, how do you choose to react to that nature? That's the question. Capo has an interesting question, sort of like our friend on Twitch. Do Buddhists believe in an afterlife? Of course. No, karma and rebirth are integral parts of Buddhism. As you say, if there's no life to life, then yeah, there's no point of practicing Buddhism. Yeah, the Buddha himself says this. I don't know that hedonism would be the path, because even people who are atheistic and stuff, people who practice hedonism, they see that might take years, but after a while, they see it's just not the way to go. It doesn't lead to anything healthy in life, even if they're not religious. Is there anything else? Maybe it's time to start to close up. Anthony makes a funny comment. Buddhism teaches a different kind of hedonism, pleasure of renunciation. Yeah, that's a great one. I like that. All right. I think that's good enough to call it for the night. Oh, wait. Sort of a follow up question. What attitude should we take towards people who actively plot ways to harm us? Distance yourself from them, protect yourself from them, and give them lots of metta. Yeah. Some say we should use metta, others say we should ignore them. You should distance yourself, protect yourself, and do metta. You can do all of that because the distancing and protecting is physical action. Metta is mental attitude. Hello, Karuna. Hello. Good to see you. All right. Why don't we do our final business? Then we'll share merits and end for the night. Karuna, I don't know if you know, but we are starting an hour early these days, and I think honestly, I like starting a bit earlier for my energy and for things. I think it's good. Um, I also don't end up because every time I do like any kind of Dhamma sharing, I tend to have to take a couple hours to wind down. It's always how it is. Always how it is. Because I get so full of like Dhamma energy that it's not easy to just go right to sleep. So it's actually quite nice to have not to have to be up till midnight before really falling asleep. So I think this 7 o'clock might be permanent. Well, impermanent, but temporarily permanent. We'll see. Right? It's been 8 o'clock since the beginning of Dhammapalooza, which was April 2020. So, people get used to a time and then they but I think the hour earlier is better. It's only worse for people who living on the West Coast because it's the Dhammapalooza starts while they're still at work. But it's better for the people in Europe who it starts they're not up so late. So win some, lose some. You can't win them all. All right. So friends, for those of you who might be watching this for the first time, thank you for coming on with us, and I hope this stream was beneficial. If you'd like to find out more from me, you can find my website, Maggasekha.org, which is the website scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Maggasekha.org. Maggasekha is the name of the organization that I'm building. It means student of the path, that path being the Noble Eightfold Path. So on this website, you can find all kinds of information. When I do, when I have retreats, I have a retreat coming in a couple of weeks, a Zoom weekend retreat. When retreats are happening, Zoom, when streams are happening, uploaded videos, articles, etc. You can go to my website and find out all the latest information. When I'm traveling and I can't do any streams, etc. The website is the best place to go to find out all kinds of information. And the website, when you go to it on the top right, there's a place for you to put your email. So then every time I post something, you will get an email notification. Same thing on YouTube. You can subscribe, click the bell, and you'll get all the notifications from everything I do on YouTube. In terms of the normal things that I do, obviously Monday nights, 7 p.m. That's New York time, GMT -5. 7 p.m. New York time, we have our Dhammapalooza on Monday nights. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. New York time, we have our morning monastery experience, which is a half-hour session where we do some chanting, we do some Dhamma learning, a little Dhamma talk, etc. It's supposed to emulate the experience of the morning sessions at monasteries. And there's a good core group of about 7 to 10 people who are always in there in the morning saying hello to each other and doing a little bit of Dhamma before going to work. I think that's a good thing. Some people who join from Europe, it's a little bit later in the day, but it is what it is. Um, so that's Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. New York time. Saturday at 3 p.m. New York time, I do an hour and a half long session on Insight Timer. So if you are an Insight Timer, you can find me as a teacher on there and join me for my sessions on there. And we also have a online community on the program called Discord, the Maggasekha online community. This is a community that is both studies and practices in line with the early Buddhist texts, the suttas. If this is a community that's been going on for 7 years, a little over 7 years now. We read suttas together, meditate together. There's all kinds of resources, etc. If this sounds like something that you're interested in, you can send an email to the email listed on the screen, maggasekha@gmail.com, and ask for an invite, and you can join. And on that, every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we do an hour of reading the suttas together as a community. We take turns. Everybody, people volunteer to take turns to read. It's not just me reading the sutta, which is great. I like it when everybody gets to read, gets to practice their Pali pronunciation, things like that. And I think that's good for our friends. So why don't we share merits? Let me bring up the screen here. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, etta vata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sappa sampatti siddhya, akasatta chabumata deva naga mahiddika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. So we have come to the end of another Monday night Dhammapalooza. Sukhi Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which, if I'm alive, might be tomorrow for a morning monastery experience, or might be next week for another Dhammapalooza. Have a good week.